Joining us now is Akash Patel, a recent graduate of the University of Oklahoma, who has recently started a nonprofit program to help undocumented immigrant students get on the right path. Akash, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start off with your story. Give us a brief synopsis of how you got here today.
Sure. My family and I came to the United States from the UK when I was just 2 years old, from London. That included my sister and both my parents. So we came here on visitor visas, and through some complications and confusion in our process, we accidentally overstayed those visas. And that actually situation is surprisingly common, which resulted in us being undocumented, unauthorized immigrants while trying to go through the process the right way. So ultimately it took 16 years for us to get our green cards, and actually just 3 weeks ago I officially applied for naturalization, for full citizenship. That's sort of the good news. The bad news is because the process is very complicated, by the time that day came where we got our green cards on my 18th birthday, my sister had aged out of the system. One other problem in the statutes of the immigration code, which means that because she turned 21 before that day came, she's kicked out of the application. And so that's another sort of nuance in the laws that we're trying to sort of figure out how to negotiate now.
Let's start with your experience with a lot of what we're talking about today, the impact on children and what children are going through. So as a child immigrant to the country, what was your experience like going through that process?
Yeah, the process is very confusing, certainly very frightening as well. Sometimes you don't really know not only how to take advantage of certain opportunities, but what's going to happen to you if someone finds out that you're undocumented, what is going to happen. And so as a kid growing up in schools, I didn't quite know how to broach the topic with my counselors, teachers, if I could tell my friends about it. So I was very hesitant to ask for help, because if I had to ask a counselor how to apply for a scholarship or apply to go to college, then I have to tell them about my status. So it's a very difficult place to be, knowing that you're very frightened, but also knowing that you have to find out somehow how to thrive and contribute anyway.
So why have you become an advocate, and how are you advocating for immigration reform?
Sure. The main thing for me is I sort of, in a sense, made it. I got to go to college. I went to the University of Oklahoma and just graduated. And my sister, even despite her complications because of DACA, President Obama's executive order, is getting her PhD. And so I reflected on that after graduating and throughout my senior year, and realized a lot of kids don't make it that far. And I wanted to just help all the kids who aren't making it this far, and sort of figure out how we can, on a local level, work together to expand opportunities for young people.
My mother has taught English as a second language almost her entire career, and has worked on working with either immigrant students or just foreign students that are here maybe for a short time. You mentioned work visa, that some families come to our country and come out. What do you think are some of the challenges that our viewers at home may not realize students and children are facing right now? You mentioned the comfort, possibly being scared. What else is going on?
So one is lack of information out there to help students realize what they can take advantage of. And the reason that sort of came to mind for me is because of my research project. I did interviews with the counselors and the students, school officials, and I found out what some of those wrinkles were. And the fact was, schools aren't well equipped to always have the right information for their migrant students. So a lot of times you run up against a wall of ignorance. Students just don't know that they can apply to go to college without a social, for example, that there are private sources of funding for undocumented students despite the lack of state aid. Those types of things. So a lot of it is a knowledge gap. That's one of the biggest problems we have with immigrant youth in Oklahoma City, is knowing how to take advantage of opportunities, go to college, get work permits, a license, even though you're undocumented.
So let's go from just a macro level. We see that whether it's the White House and Congress, it seems to be Republicans, Democrats can't agree, and we're fighting over this issue yet again. What are some of the consequences to not addressing this issue and not having comprehensive reform?
Sure. I think each month that goes by we don't pass reform, we become complicit with our system that is forcing families into cycles of poverty and oppression. We're condoning the lack of regulation across our borders, and our economy is suffering, demonstrably so. There's always a supply of talent all around the world that want to come to the United States, and we should welcome them to the fabric of our economy. And by and large, they obviously create economic wealth. They raise revenues for us. But every month that goes by we don't achieve reform, our economy suffers, our communities dwindle, our families are separated, they succumb to violence, our students drop out of school, they become hopeless. All these things are happening because kids have fallen through the system, families can't live together, and people can't come and contribute to our economy.
What would you suggest is an immediate solution, or maybe one simple fix that's right in front of us that we could do to help our immigration system?
That's a tough question. The first thing
there's several.
Yeah, I mean, I would do several things simultaneously. I think most fundamentally, you have to simplify the system of legal migration, make it more efficient and manageable. And by that, I mean, for example, there are certain types of family-based immigration applications that the government is processing. And the certain category that the government is processing from 1993 still So that tells us that they're decades behind.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, obviously going to incentivize illegal migration, because doing it the right way is so hard and so difficult, time consuming. So I think one sort of simple fundamental fix we need to do is somehow simplify the system, make it more efficient and navigable for families.
So quickly, as we wrap up here, folks at home are watching saying, wow, inspired by what you're doing. How can I help? How can I get involved? What can they do?
Sure, yeah. So my organization I'm starting, called Aspiring Americans Initiative, is a joint effort with the Oklahoma City Public School District and other partners in the area to get together to train counselors, do staff training, do clinics and forums for students and staff. And if you're interested in learn more, then go to aspiringamericans.org.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate all that you're doing. We'd like to hear from you. Send us your thoughts and comments on all of this. Please go to our Facebook page. You can post comments there at facebook.com/middlegroundtv or on Twitter @middlegroundtv. We'll share some of your comments right after this break.